In 2013, President Park Geun-hye made history by becoming South Korea's first female president. President Park, the country's 18th president, unveiled 4 major policies under the vision of opening a new era of hope. Economic revival, national happiness, cultural enrichment, and peaceful unification. These are the 4 main policy focus areas of the Park administration. The policy areas that have seen the greatest progress over the past 2 years were the so-called unification bonanza, which means preparing for the unification based on trust politique as well as the creative economy to revitalize economic opportunities. Supporting this view is the fact that the policy areas most frequently discussed in Upfront during 2014 were the economy and unification. Upfront has covered various economic policies and their achievements in the past year. And that included the outlook for the so-called Chainomics of the President's newly appointed economic policy team, solutions for public service pension reform, controversies surrounding rice tariffs, as well as carbon emissions trading. The 3-year Economic Innovation Plan, which was well received at the G20 summit in Australia, as well as trade policies including the signing of the Korea-China FTA, are some of President Park Geun-hye's greatest economic achievements.
한마디로 통일은 대박이다. 대박이다.
Unification bonanza. President Park Geun-hye's remarks expressing her strong conviction towards unification stirred up interest across the world. The government's unification bonanza drive has made many headlines since the beginning of 2014. It was also the topic for the first episode of Upfront. Upfront has also covered 6 different items regarding the unification, which include the role of North Korean defectors in achieving unification, building a peace park in the DMZ, and inter-Korean economic cooperation. Among President Park's unification policies, the idea to bind the Eurasia region as one massive economic zone to induce market reform in North Korea has seen some major progress, including the test operation of the Trans-Korean Railway. Just as she did last year, President Park Geun-hye again showed strong will to revitalize the domestic economy and lay a firm foundation for unification. The year 2015 has ushered in the 3rd year of the Park administration. In today's Upfront, we discuss the government's major policies, their outcomes so far, and the outlook for the future.
Hello and welcome to Upfront. Thanks for tuning in. I am Kang Tae-ri. Korean President Park Geun-hye marked her 2 years in office on February 25th. On this week's Upfront, we give our own progress report on the Park Geun-hye administration and talk about challenges ahead. And of course, for this conversation, we have a great panel of experts right here in the studio. First up, to my left, we are joined by Mr. Lee Il-houng, President of Korea Institute for International Economic Policy. Thank you so much for joining us today.
Thank you for having me here today.
And to my right, we have Mr. Choi Kang, Vice President of Asan Institute for Policy Studies. Welcome to our studio.
Pleasure to be here.
All right, and before we get started, I want to just throw a warm-up question, shall I call it? And because you come from different fields of experts, how do you assess the past 2 years? What kind of grades would you give? Anybody?
So actually, let me start off with the fact that she has well managed the very difficult situation. For example, just at the beginning of this administration, North Korea staged 3rd nuclear test. 3 months before that, actually, there was a missile test done by North Korea. But actually, she managed the security situation very well. And also, she upgraded our relations with China very successfully. Because actually, during the previous administration, there was some concern coming from China. But actually, she cleared that Chinese concern over the past 2 years. And also, at the same time, she has strengthened our relations with the United States very much. So I think overall, in foreign policy and national security matters, I I can give about plus.
Okay.
A.
Plus A.
Yes, A plus.
A plus. Okay. All right. What about you?
I think we need to assess her achievements against the background of a very turmoil global economic environment, as well as a very difficult economic situation domestically. Right. She successfully stood up against these challenges and laid the foundation for a change in Korea's DNA.
Right.
It's summarized in the three-year economic plan, what we call the 474. So my assessment from purely an economics point of view is a very high mark for her performance.
Okay, wow. So a lot of good grades going for her in the beginning of this show. So I guess to sum up, it was a lot about managing risk that are out there. Now, before we go any further into this conversation, take a look at this next report to gauge how the Korean people, the public, assesses the first 2 years of the Park Geun-hye administration.
How does the public view the past 2 years of the Park Geun-hye administration? Upfront went out to the streets to hear some opinions.
What impressed me most were the FTAs and the president's speech at the UN.
Her role as Korea's first female president and her creative economy stand out the most.
I think she did well in her North Korean policy. Her consistent diplomatic stance separates her administration from those of the past.
According to a recent survey, 31.9% of the public rated the president's diplomatic policies positively, followed by the consistent security policy toward the North, job creation through the creative economy, and swift settlement of FTAs. Then what does the public hope to see from President Park Geun-hye, who has just entered her 3rd year in office?
I think more benefits should be offered for the low-income bracket and university students like me to improve the standard of living.
A lot of incidents took place last year. I hope the president would take pride in her role as Korea's female president and show stronger leadership.
I think it's time to move on from abstract promises to policies based on an understanding of ordinary livelihoods and market conditions.
The public pointed out revitalizing the domestic economy, strengthening communication with the public, and promoting social welfare as the most important challenges remaining for the Park Geun-hye administration. Reviving the economy, boosting communication with the public, and strengthening social welfare are the 3 main goals identified by the government as well. How well the government works towards those goals would be the barometer for the president's success in the coming 3 years.
So just like we saw in the video, revitalization of the domestic economy seems to be the key here. And I want to talk about the recent political hot potato, if I may call it that. So the idea of more welfare programs with no tax hike, which is essentially her presidential campaign pledges. What went wrong with this idea?
Well, I think it's too early to make a judgment. I would define her approach as two-pronged. The first one is essentially addressing the welfare through creating jobs. The second one is to target the vulnerable groups and strengthen the foundation of building a welfare system very much in mind of the rapid aging that we face in the next 30, 40 years. So given that her plans are not just simply short-term oriented, but rather laying a foundation for long-term progress, I think it's simply too early to make a judgment as to whether her plans were successful or not.
And you did say this is more of a long-term drive initiative, and in the long-term vision, it was to create that virtuous cycle where we carry out structural reforms successfully, hopefully, and create jobs. And we somehow deal with that underground economy, that as we called it, and plug those holes so that we can provide more welfare. So how far have we come in terms of deregulation, which is the key part of the structural reforms that we're talking about?
I think we've just started finishing the plan. It's essentially summarized in the 474. And now it's the time of implementation. How successful we will be depends partly on how fast we can move on the legislations. and also at the same time on the capacity of those who implement it. The reason is, even though we may actually pass certain legislation, the difficult task here, or the real challenge, is to implement it correctly in tandem with the technological development that we are seeing.
Right.
We are at the moment facing a very rapid technological change. The economic structures that we face changing overnight. So if you want to regulate properly a system that is changing very rapidly, you really need expertise.
Right.
It's the same problem that the United States faced in the early 2000s when the financial system were expanding very rapidly. They were very short, the SEC, for example, the regulatory body, is very short of expertise. They were losing people left and right to the market and had difficult time of crafting regulations that was actually going ahead of the rapidly evolving nature of the financial system. And I think we are facing a very similar situation. It's not limited to financial sector, but it's all over the place. The problem that we face at the moment is very high natural rate of unemployment.
Right.
And one way, or the best way to reduce the natural rate of unemployment is essentially to deregulate the system, revitalize the market-based system so that competition enhances. And thus, if you move from a monopolistic competition to a perfect competition, it obviously draws more labor force into work. And that's what she meant by creating jobs. And that's the kind of jobs that we need, that is actually creating value added, rather than just forcing companies to make few more positions, because that won't be sustainable.
So let's stay with the idea of employment, and jobs are, I mean, without a doubt important. It will be a good gauge of how well a government's economic initiatives are working, and also how the general public, especially the young generation, will grade an administration. And structural reform of the labor market is the angle that the Korean government at this point is taking on this front. So our team had a chance to sit down with Mr. Kim Dae-hwan, chairman of the Economic and Social Development Commission, on this topic.
그리고 통상임금 문제라든지 근로시간 단축의 문제, 정년 연장과 관련된 소위 말하는 노동 3현안을 이 합리적으로 마무리 지음으로 해서 산업 현장의 이 혼란을 지금 현재 빨리 불식시키자는 것이고, 하나는 그보다 좀 더 중장기적이지만 우리가 노동시장 이중 구조를 해소를 하면서 사회 안전망의 그 확충과 더불어서 이것을 질서 있게 개혁을 해 나가는 그런 과정입니다. 그래서 지금 저희 그 특별위원회에서 이러한 논의를 끊임없이 하고 있고, 특히 전문가 그룹은 매주 그 2차례 이상 회의를 거듭하면서 이 논의를 지금 현재 해나가고 있습니다. 그래서 지금 계획으로는 아마 2월 말 3월 초면은 이게 관련된 이 쟁점들이 그 정리가 될 것이고, 그 가운데 노사정의 그 이 의견이 그 좁혀질 수 있는 대로 좁히고, 그리고 3월 상순부터는 노사정 그 대표들이 구체적인 이 쟁점들을 놓고 서로 협의를 통해서 해결책을 마련하려고 지금 현재 계획을 하고 있습니다. 노동시장 구조 개혁을 통해서 이 고용률도 높이고, 특히 우리는 이 여성 인력들의 이 노동시장 이 진입을 높여 나가면서 그렇게 해야 될 것이고, 곧바로 이 안정적인 일자리를 보다 많은 사람들이 갖는다고 하는 게, 이게 바로 이 중산층 그 정대 방안이죠. 그래서 저는 노동시장 구조 개혁에 범정부적으로 뿐만 아니라 범사회적으로 관심을 가지고 지금 우리 위원회에서 준행하고 있는 것처럼 그야말로 사회적 대타협을 통해서 반드시 이 노사정 사회의 이 노동시장 구조 개혁을 통한 해법이 마련돼야 된다고 생각을 합니다.
And as you actually mentioned earlier on in the program, you gave a lot of points for the Park Geun-hye administration for her efforts to create the partnership with other economies, sort of a way to save the Korean economy, export more, boost domestic demand and whatnot. So we have come quite a long way in terms of increasing free trade territory for the Korean economy. We have 5 more free trade agreements, I believe, under our belt. So does this help free trade agreements? Is this what we need, and do we need more?
I think so, definitely, because actually we have to find a market for our goods, and also on the other end, that actually we have opened up our own market to other imported goods very well. So I think over the years she has been very successful, especially in concluding the FTA with China. I think that's very meaningful, not only in trade and economy, but also in diplomatic front. I think that is a very, very important achievement she has made actually in 2014, very much. Of course, actually it takes time to get the fruits of FTA with China, but actually she has opened up. Actually, maybe Korea is the only one country who actually concluded the FTA with the United States on one hand and with China on the other. Maybe this is only one country that has that two fronts. Very much.
Well, we're going to talk about China factor a little bit later on, but do you agree with him in terms of the need for more trade agreements? This is the way to go.
You know, as you know, the DDA under WTO has been very slow making progress, and thus bilateral and plurilateral FTAs came to being. For Korea, President Park certainly understands the picture, what we will be facing in 20 years from now. And it will be a system where everybody will be competing with one another, irrespective of what side of the border you will be sitting in. It will be a competition at different stages of production, not only in the final product, but at all different stages of production. And in order to prepare for yourself for such a new regime of competition, you need to open up. But you need to open it a certain way. And the way that we engage in FTA bilateral agreements and so on is very different from the way we used to think about bilateral FTAs 20 years ago. It's not only simply reducing tariffs, but it's essentially allowing FTI services and complete integration of the economy so that we can be prepared to face the next generation of the trade that will be entering pretty soon, or have already entered.
The underlying theme seems to be looking further ahead, looking long-term for the Park Geun-hye administration, and I guess we are in that stage where we need to. Now, let's talk about the Korea-China Free Trade Agreement a little further. We picked up some of the articles that are related to this agreement. Both countries' leaders agreed to elevate their bilateral relationship to a comprehensive strategic partnership, economic partnership, by signing free trade agreement deals. What would be some of the implications, both economically, as you already mentioned, and diplomatically?
So actually, diplomatically, that actually we are really the partners in developing or shaping the future very much with China. So I think that was very significant, the start of our new type of relations between Korea and China very much. So we can go into details, we are opening up our own markets to each other. So and then there's more collaboration and cooperative work could be done in economic and trade point. And also that requires lots of coordination on legal aspect as well. So we are going to more not actually integrated, but it's cooperative with each other in various dimensions. So economy doesn't stop at the economic front, but it also covers the diplomatic issues very well. If you have a huge economic interest, mutual interest, I think there is a way to overcome some difficulty in non-economy or trade areas very much. So I can give very significant meaning, diplomatic meaning for concluding the FTA with China very much. Of course, it is not a high standard FTA, maybe it's a medium standard FTA, because actually, but it takes time for realizing all the fruits, all the implementing the agreement. But it's a very good start of our new type of relations with China.
And I understand that we're talking about a free trade agreement. So we're talking about bilateral trade, exports, imports, numbers, and whatnot. But we are also talking about, how we deal with North Korea, the geopolitical tensions. And I'm hoping that would naturally lead to the inter-Korean relations. So would that help somehow down the road?
I think so. I think that actually over the years, actually since the beginning of Xi Jinping administration in China, Chinese policy toward North Korea has begun to change. Of course, we will be more patient. We should be more patient in judging the Chinese policy toward North Korea. But China has an increasing economic interest in Korea, in stabilizing the Korean Peninsula very much. So I think that by concluding FTA with China, that actually helped us to overcome in dealing with North Korean challenge in various fields. Because actually it seems to me that since the inauguration of President Xi Jinping, I sense some changes in Chinese policy toward North Korea, very much accommodating our own interests very much. For example, Xi Jinping has never visited Pyongyang. Actually, he came to Seoul instead of Pyongyang. It's an unprecedented case. That actually symbolizes how much they actually underscores the importance of Korea. Actually, concluding FTA actually upgrade our relations also very much in dealing with North Korea as well.
But if I may go back a little bit, because I think I need to bring some context to why we or why President Park is more forward-looking than people might actually prefer. The reason is, as I said, we are facing a situation where maintenance of the status quo won't work anymore. I'll give you an example. Domestic demand in real terms in Korea has been stuck at zero growth rate for the last 10 years. Exports have been falling in terms of growth rates, but in terms of the value added that Korea is actually providing has been falling faster. So if you continue at this rate, we'll be gradually coming to a stop. Our economy can actually continue to grow if the government uses its policy space that it has for the next couple of years. That would probably be beneficial at the political level, but she's not doing that. She's trying to address the foundations of the problems rather than just trying to window dress the problem. So she has made a definite decision to use her political capital to introduce a change into the system. You talked about FTA with China.
Right.
I can also tell you that we have been losing grounds in our trade with China also. So if we had continued, I can tell you that we have been losing market share in China, both in the factor market, product market, and also our main exports, more than 50% were actually going to China because we were using China as a production base. That was coming down also. So had we gone as we have, maintaining status quo, our trade with China would have come down gradually, continuously. So when we talk about forward-looking, it's actually forward-looking, but it's something that is very urgently needed now. So it's not a matter of what will happen in 20 years, but it's something that we need to do now to ensure a brighter future for our next generation.
Okay, so trying to tackle both the challenges, I guess, the short term as well as long term. Then we were talking about China and North Korea, inter-Korean relations. You gave her a lot of points for successfully managing risk coming from North Korea in the beginning. How well do we think she's done in terms of inter-Korean relations? I mean, she's managing risk, but is that it?
No, actually, I think, let me start off this incident that happened in Kaesong. I think in resolving the Kaesong industrial complex tension, actually, which was started by North Korea by withdrawing all the 50,000 workers from the Kaesong industrial complex, she sent a very strong signal by shutting down Kaesong industrial complex temporarily, not permanently. So she actually showed that she is going to stick to her principle very much, very strong signal. For the first time, actually, we have sent our strong determination and resolve to North Korea. Then North Korea came back to the negotiation table, and then so. Of course, there are some cases or the conflict between the two Koreas, but up to now, I think that she has well managed this tension to a certain level. But of course, she has promised to open up and improve our relations with DPRK. But unfortunately, DPRK has not responded to our call yet. For example, President Park Geun-hye offered humanitarian assistance to North Korea, but North Korea simply denied and rejected that offer. Right. So she's very much determined to improving the bilateral relation with North Korea. But it's North Korea's dilemma whether it is going to open up and improve the relations with South Korea. But I hope we can have some positive response. But North Korea has different agendas at this point of time. It's a self-isolated country nowadays. Even the United States has been offering the chance to talk and negotiate, but North Korea simply rejected the idea. But actually, she has well managed the coalition or cooperation among all concerned parties very well. The other 5 parties, for example, China, US, Korea, Japan, and Russia, not necessarily Russia, but anyway, these 4 countries are collaborating very much. I think I think there's a more common element among 3 countries, Korea, China, and the United States. That's quite unprecedented case.
I recently read about a survey that showed only 1 out of 10 Koreans think that Korea is a happy society. Now, to hear more about the president's efforts to resolve conflicts and enhance communication with the public, we sat down with Han Kwang-ok, chairman of a presidential committee on national unity. Take a look.
우리가 한 60여 년 동안의 압축 성장을 해오지 않았습니까? 근데 그 압축 성장을 해온 과정 속에서 보이지 않는 그 압축 갈등이 쌓여왔던 거예요, 이게. 지금처럼 그 다양화된 그 사회 속에서는 사회적인 그 신뢰, 이것은 이제 우리가 하면 소위 그 소셜 캐피탈이라고 얘기할 수가 있죠. 사회적인 자본으로 이게 등장이 돼 있거든요, 신뢰가. 그러니까 이런 것을 하기 위해서는 국민의 통합이 꼭 필요한 것이죠. 더욱이 우리가 나가야 될 것은 우리 민족의 하나의 그 비전이라고 얘기할 수 있는 그 남북의 평화적인 통일 문제를 우리가 해결하는 데 있어서도 우리가 국민대 통합이 하나의 기초적인 소위 그 인프라를 까는 거나 마찬가지거든요. 그러니까 그런 면에서 이 국민대 통합이라고 하는 것은 대단히 중요한 그 시대적인 하나의 과제라고 볼 수가 있고, 작년 그 3월 달에 작은 실천 큰 보람 운동을 전개했습니다. 그래서 이제 쉽게 말해서 우리가 그 기초 질서를 지켜야 된다. 막말을 해서는 안 된다. 남을 배려해야 된다. 뭐 이러한 여러 가지 실천 항목을 정해가지고 우리가 이제 실질적으로 형이학적인 면에서 현실적인 면에서 국민들에게 호소해가면서 이제 운동을 해왔다는 거 하고, 그 다음에 이제 그 갈등을 유발할 수 있는 그 법령이라든가 그 제도를 고치기 위해서 또 많은 노력을 우리가 했습니다. 우리가 자문기구이지만서도 갈등의 현장에 개입할 수 있는, 직접적으로 개입할 수 있는 그런 길이 있으면 그분들하고 상의를 해가지고 그런 문제를 해결하는 그런 나름대로의 그 업적을 쌓았습니다.
Now, so far, we've talked about how the Park Geun-hye administration has performed over the past 2 years. Now, let's look forward and think about what kind of year 2015 will be for the president as well as for her government. We start by looking back at her New Year's press conference outlining her policy drives.
2 years have passed since President Park took office, and along with the beginning of the year 2015, the president has unveiled her plans for the remaining 3 years. The first was a plan to revitalize the domestic economy.
첫째로 공공, 노동, 금융, 교육 등 4대 부문을 중심으로 구조 개혁에 박차를 가해서 기초가 튼튼한 경제를 만들겠습니다. 국민 여러분, 경제혁신의 2번째 실천 전략은 경제의 역동성을 회복하는 것입니다. 이를 위해 우선 창조 경제를 전국, 전 산업으로 확산시켜 새로운 바람을 불어넣을 것입니다. 경제혁신의 3번째 실천 전략은 내수 확대를 통해 우리 경제를 내수와 수출이 균형을 이루는 경제로 만드는 것입니다.
And the president also expressed her will to lay a firm foundation for the peaceful unification of the Korean peninsula.
올해 광복 70주년을 맞아 통일준비위원회를 중심으로 통일의 비전과 방향에 대해 국민과 마음과 뜻을 모으고 범국민적, 초당적 합의를 이루어내서 평화 통일을 위한 확고한 토대를 마련할 것입니다. 정부는 앞으로 남북관계 발전과 평화통일의 기반 구축을 위해 민간 차원의 지원과 협력을 통해서 실질적인 대화와 협력의 통로를 만들어 나가고자 합니다.
President Park Geun-hye finished her New Year's speech by emphasizing her resolution for the year 2015 as president.
집권 3년 차를 맞이하면서 그동안을 돌아보면 저는 국가 경제를 살리고 국민들의 삶이 나아지도록 하기 위해 한순간도 마음 놓고 쉰 날이 없었던 것 같습니다. 그러나 아직 국민 여러분의 기대에 못 미친 것들이 있어 안타깝습니다. 이제 경제혁신 3개년 계획을 국민 여러분과 힘을 합해 성공적으로 이루어내서 그 결실을 국민 여러분께 안겨드리고 싶은 것이 저의 소망입니다.
Her approval ratings, like you said, will depend a lot on the economy. So what kind of year do you think 2015 will be for her and her approval ratings and the government?
Well, the second, I can't really answer, but the former, certainly 2015, on average, it will be slightly better than 2014, but it will be more uneven and somewhat greater risk. Uneven in terms of growth rate prospects in advanced economies. The US economy will probably do slightly better, but European countries will face greater challenges. There is some question as to the sustainability of the euro system. And even the UK, there has been some talk whether they should remain in the EU as well. So obviously there are some fundamental problems that needs to be resolved for the European countries to regain competitiveness. On emerging economies, very diverse, partly depending on whether commodity exporters, oil exporters, importers, and also whether their fundamentals are strong. Some economies are facing macroeconomic imbalances. On balance, I would think that countries like India will grow faster because of political determination and unity, whereas on average the rest will probably be about the same as in 2014. But for Korea, we will be slightly better off, partly because the average economic growth globally will be somewhat better. There will be a positive net impact from oil price declines. The real benefit will probably be felt in the next 2-3 years, but certainly this year we'll start feeling the difference. So let's hope that ceteris paribus, we will improve. But as I said, there will be higher risk also.
How do you, yes,
yeah, but what about the exchange rate? Because compared to last year, I think the won is very strong, but the yen is very weak. So how that would affect this, our export to other markets?
Okay, on our exchange rate, it partly depends for strange reasons whether what happens to the United States and the normalization process of the monetary policy. Let's assume that everything goes as planned according to the baseline. Then our exchange rate will probably remain as is, roughly. Yen, I don't think the Japanese government can allow further depreciation of the yen because it also has very negative impact on consumer welfare. So we'll probably be trotting along as we have in 2014. However, if the downside risks materializes and the United States engages in premature raising of the interest rate, then we will be some problem in global financial system, some uncertainty. The flight to safety will kick in. The US exchange rate will most likely will depreciate. So we'll face a completely different regime. And there are also some linkages through the financial channel that we have to look out for.
Okay. Now, I want to shift gears just a little bit and talk about this so-called Eurasia initiative. It's emerged as a way to boost the domestic spending or economy here and also create that sense of cooperation with other countries that are neighboring. So how is this initiative progressing?
I have to tell we are going nowhere. Not because of our interest or endeavor, but because of U.S.-Russian relations. Since the Ukraine crisis and also still, U.S. is trying to increase the sanction vis-a-vis Russia at the point of time, despite the other European countries try to improve their relations with Russia. I think the U.S. is a critical factor in determining the future of our Eurasian initiative, unfortunately. I have to be very frank on that, because actually we have to make investment in realizing the Eurasian initiative, for example, Trans-Siberian Railway or Trans-Korean Railway connection, and then building up all the highway all the way to Europe requires a lot of investment, the financial resources and technical, or this gas pipeline is another issue, for example.
Right.
We have to make an investment, but U.S. is against the investment in Russia at the point of time. But if there is an improvement between Russia and the United States over the Ukraine crisis, I think there is a hope for us in realizing or make a progress in Eurasian initiative. This is not short-term project, this is long-term project. So it requires a relatively patience and long-term vision investment, step by step. So I keep my finger crossed at this point of time for the improvement of relations between Russia and the United States.
I don't want to sound that negative on the Eurasian initiative.
Okay, we have an optimist here.
No, because you're right. We've been making less progress with Russia in particular, but Eurasia initiative is not limited to Russia alone. It's Central Asia, Mongolia,
exactly.
China,
yes.
and Europe, and also with Russia in limited sense. We have been making progress with the other countries. With China in particular, we've made an agreement on how to collaborate with the Silk Road plans that China has with our Eurasian initiative. And with Russia also, I mean, the whole plan, roadmap is being built. It's spearheaded by the Minister of Finance, Strategy and Finance. So there are plans being made. We have temporary fallback in a situation.
I agree. Actually, instead of just simply focusing on Russia, we have to keep our eyes open to other partners, the Central Asian countries like Kazakhstan, Uzbekistan, and also China. There's an alternative way. So we should not just simply focus on Russia at the point of time. While there's impasse in our relations with Russia due to these U.S.-Russian relations, we can make a detour to actually lay a foundation for realizing the Eurasian initiative in a rather medium to long-term perspective.
So we're talking about feasibility of this initiative. Then what about those great benefits for the Korean economy? What do we get out of this?
In terms of economic benefits, well, the greatest benefit will be if North Korea joins this initiative, obviously.
That's right.
That will open up the corridor to the continent through land. And we've actually commissioned, meaning the Korea Institute of Economic Policy has commissioned think tanks in the neighboring countries to actually do an assessment study. And all think tanks in the 4 countries came back with assessment that North Korea joining this initiative will be economically very beneficial to their countries. Obviously, depending on how you calculate, the scope will be different, but it seems that China, Japan, US and Russia in that order will benefit from this initiative. But that actually is assessing the direct impact only, because in the end, in the long term, the greatest benefit factor will probably be Russia, because as you know, the Siberia area and the eastern part of Russia is very underdeveloped. It's a huge landmass, very rich in resources, and all this is sort of being isolated, cut off from the rest of the world. Once North Korea joins this initiative, this whole area can be developed, and that can bring a huge potential benefit for everyone involved, including, of course, South Korea.
Of course, that will make a huge contribution to the economic cooperation between the 2 Koreas, and also that actually leads to more stable relations and more stable and peaceful Korean peninsula, and then we can have more investment coming from all over the world, and also that actually leads to more regional economic cooperation. So President Park has been arguing for over the couple of years we should overcome the Asian paradox. So I think that this initiative can make a contribution in overcoming this Asian paradox by expanding the common benefits for all the partners, not only in Asia but also in Europe.
Now, talking about getting cooperation from North Korea and stabilizing somewhat the inter-Korean relations, what kind of year do you think 2015 will be for the two Koreas? Are we going to be able to break this typical pattern with the North?
Unfortunately, I have to say not that much optimistic about that. Actually, North Korea has been upgrading the propaganda or raising the tension. For example, they did actually stage the missile test, I think about 20 days ago.
Right.
So, and also in March, we will start our annual military exercise, Key Resolve. I think that North Korea will use that as a way to justify their provocation or tension-raising activities very much. And then, I don't know, actually, that actually leads to maybe, maybe there's a chance for both Koreas to have some talks, maybe after, around April and May. If that passes, that those 2 months passes without any breakthrough, I think that we will enter into another military exercise cycle. So at the first, I think this maybe this from April to June or July is the best time for two Koreas to improve relations. Oh, that also relates to what is the nature of relation between the United States and North Korea. For example, the United States has been very active in having a dialogue with North Korea in the past months, but without any concrete result. So they have been arguing for the concrete action taken by North Korea on nuclear front. So if there is any kind of positive response or action taken by North Korea, I think there is a way for us to overcome this stalemate and then make a progress toward a stable and peaceful Korean peninsula.
We saw a lot of high-level U.S. officials visiting South Korea recently. Wendy Sherman coming to visiting Korea recently, and Deputy Secretary of State Tony Blinken also talking about North Korean issue on his Asia trip. So how do we read this? Are we seeing some efforts to sort of show that we're coordinated on North Korea?
Of course, definitely we have been coordinating our policy toward North Korea between Korea and the United States. But I think this, from the beginning of this year, maybe there are some suspicion. Is there daylight between Korea and the U.S. over North Korea policy? While, for example, the U.S. is going much tougher on North Korea policy, while South Korea is seeking more dialogue. But actually, to the visit of these high-ranking U.S. officials, actually try to eliminate that kind of suspicion, and then to show the public we are united on this issue very much. I think that when they came to Seoul, and then of course she came to our institute, we have a very, very good dialogue, very much. We actually, there's all common elements, and also there's no daylight at all. So actually there's, to eliminate that kind of suspicion and worry about this ROK-US coordination over North Korea policy.
So what do we do with North Korea? How do we maneuver this with Washington, Tokyo, and Pyongyang? What's the stance that you would like to recommend for the Park Geun-hye administration?
I think this is very critical for South Korea to lead North Korea policy very much. I have to say that, because actually United States preoccupied with the Middle Eastern crisis at the point of time, Ukraine very much. Third, in relation to that, maybe Russia. So actually, United States has so many issues too. President Obama has so many issues to tackle with. So while the Xi Jinping is also, as I said before, is so much preoccupied with domestic issues very much. So it is the right time for South Korea to bring these two giants together. I think the U.S., Korea, China collaboration is very critical. That's first one. And then if we can bring Japan into our own circle, I think that's a very another challenging one. But of course, maybe the Korea-Japan relations has never been worse than this point of time. So, but I think, so we have to bring in all the concerned parties on the same page of history together. So nobody's going to take initiative except South Korea. So South Korea should, I think Park Geun-hye government should take the lead in making a very concrete action plan in realizing the denuclearization, peaceful coexistence and unification as well.
All right, now we're talking about the Park Geun-hye administration's North Korea policy, and let's get another perspective on President Park Geun-hye's diplomatic policies, more specifically North Korea policies. Joining us is Dr. Bruce Bennett, a senior defense analyst at RAND Corporation. Dr. Bennett, thank you so much for joining us today. My first question to you, what would you say is the biggest achievement of President Park in the field of diplomacy and security?
I think probably her efforts to get North Korea to cooperate, to develop a level of trust according to her trust politic. I think that's been an effort that she has pursued to the extent that even though North Korea has not cooperated, North Korea knows she's serious. And I think they will learn over time that this is their best chance.
Now, President Park has been promoting this idea of peaceful unification as the key part of her North Korea policies. And against that backdrop, the two Koreas are not exactly engaged in any kind of decent dialogue except their usual rhetoric. How should she maneuver her way out of this deadlock?
Well, I think there are two kinds of actions that are required. The first is that the government needs to decide what will happen with unification. What will be the outcome for the senior elites in North Korea or the regular working people in North Korea? If those people can't be assured that they have a good life after unification, they're hardly going to support peaceful unification. It's essential that they have hope that unification will be good for them. I think the second part is that the government also needs to work with North Korea to get them to realize that they have got to cooperate. There have to be some small actions taken with responses. So on the May 24th provisions, I would argue that they should be repealed, but done so in a way where if North Korea commits a provocation or does a nuclear test, they are automatically put back in place without any further action by any decision maker.
And in the meantime, some say Washington's strategic patience is being tested by North Korea, and that this can actually create a gap with Seoul that's at least trying to engage Pyongyang in talks. What's your take?
North Korea has been terrible with the United States. There's been no indication of any willingness by North Korea to take positive actions. They are constantly making it very difficult for the American president to do anything positive. In fact, I think some of us are bewildered why they have been so negative. President Park has been able to make some progress, but even she has had very difficult time with the North. I don't think President Park and President Obama are working without strong consultation with each other. I think they're working together, trying to convince the North to cooperate. And hopefully the North gets that message sooner or later.
All right, hopefully. So gotta leave it there for now. Dr. Bennett, thank you so much for coming on to our show today. Dr. Bennett at RAND Corporation. So we've had quite a run today. So I want to wrap up with your final thoughts on this. And I want to start off with you, Mr. Choi, and give us an advice for the Park Geun-hye administration's foreign policy and security measures.
Actually, she has done tremendous job in foreign policy. But actually, one point is missing is like actually she has been not so much forthcoming in global issues, unfortunately, I have to say. Of course, actually, she has been, she has pledged to about $100 million for climate change like that, but actually we can be more visible in global issues, the PKO, energy. Of course, she's been, I think that she will be very, very forthcoming in the coming years, but over the past 2 years, she has been pretty much focused on this, the regional, Northeast Asian or sub-regional issues in Inter-Korean Peninsula, but not because of the lack of interest, but because the situation actually has driven her focus too much on these sub-regional issues. But I hope she can do much more on the global issues, and also maybe this is the year that actually there are so many important international the meetings, for example, in climate change summit in Paris in December, and also maybe also in the post the Millennium Development Agenda meeting will take place in New York in September. So I think that I hope she's more forthcoming in the global agenda, to be seen as one of the global leaders.
All right, and Mr. Lee, as an expert in economic policy, what would you say?
Let me comment first on what Mr. Choi just said. I guess for someone who actually participated in her global leadership at the G20, I beg to disagree again, because Korea, particularly President Park Geun-hye has been playing a leading role at the G20 in terms of coming up with initiatives on how to address the global economic slowdown and in proposing measures to address them. And it has been acknowledged at the global level. So different areas, different progress, and certainly at the G20 leaders meeting, she did make a significant contribution. We were not simply a middle power, but we did lead many of the discussions. So depending on which area you look at, you may actually have a different picture on this. On the security-related issues, political issues, while I'm not an expert in this area, the way I always felt was that if you're dealing with a partner that is very unpredictable and changes the strategy on an ongoing basis, the best strategy is to be very consistent and persistent. And that's the strategy that she has been putting forward. And depending on what and nobody really knows, what the true underlying intention of the North is, if we keep this line that we have been taking for the last 2-3 years and remain on this path, then the partner will come to some sort of an equilibrium where it will have to adjust. And that's probably the best way or best chance that we have dealing with an uncertain partner.
And what about her economic policy, Mr. Lee?
For her economic policy, she has, again, as I said, facing up to the challenges. She has used a lot of her political capital in doing this.
Right.
And I hope she maintains the current stance. I really hope that she will be able to change the very DNA of our Korean economy. But at the same time, she has also been trying to keep the economy afloat without excessively wasting resources that we have in terms of the fiscal policy, in terms of the financial policy that her administration has been providing. And I think that's exactly the way that she should continue to do so. It's very unfortunate the rating went down, as you mentioned. But if you compare Korea's economic situation, the policy intentions, the strong determination of the leadership to implement economic policy relative to other countries, we are at much better position. So I hope the Korean population will realize that what President Park is doing is actually at much better level than what many other advanced economies are doing at the moment.
Okay.
Yes, exactly, because actually that's the point I like to raise lastly is the kind of the communication with the people. It's very critical because she's just begun to change her style to have more communication with the people and also the delegate authority to the officials. I think that she just started that one, so I hope she can continue to expand communication with the people and making a national consensus at various levels. I think that's the point I like to raise at the last minute.
Hopefully her messages will be better communicated.
Oh, sure, definitely.
As well as benefits of her diplomatic as well as economic policies will be communicated to the public so that she can have a better year going forward. Thank you so much for coming in today and going up front with us.
Thank you.
Pleasure.
Thank you. And that will do it for this edition of Upfront. Thank you so much for watching, and do stay with Upfront online and tell us what you think. I'll see you next time.